Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where we review Raw and SmackDown back-to-back and try and figure out which show won for the week. A happy Independence Day to all my American viewers out there, and for everybody else, well, I guess it's just another Wednesday. Raw begins with a high package talking about all the Roman Reigns conflict, and they use that one narrator guy. They use once in a blue moon, basically. Every once in a while you see a hype package with this dude narrating the stuff instead of somebody in-house, someone that you're familiar with, and it always kind of throws me for a loop. Always comes out of left field. You think by now they would either use him more consistently or just not use him at all. That's just my nitpick about it. Anyway, Roman Reigns makes his way to the ring. They announce we're getting a rematch of Lashley and Roman versus The Revival, third week in a row. Yay. Roman says he's not making excuses, but then immediately makes an excuse as to why they lost last week. Roman cuts down Lashley, and then the record scratch happens, and it's actually really well timed. So Dolph and Drew interrupt, and they beat down Roman until Seth Rollins comes out to make the save, returning the favor from last week. So then Rollins and Reigns want a tag team match with the two of them that night. So Kurt double books Roman. So not only is he wrestling the Revival in the tag match with Lashley, he's also wrestling Dolph and Drew before that. I was kind of surprised. I thought he was just going to replace the match. Turns out he's actually wrestling twice in one night. So it was reported over the weekend that Bray Wyatt was involved in a car crash, so he's injured. He's out for Raw this week, wishing him a speedy recovery. So Matt Hardy is wrestling solo tonight against Curtis Axel in a rematch from last week. I get why Matt has to wrestle this week, but why does he have to wrestle Curtis again? Would it make more sense for him to wrestle Bo? The B team do another parody promo in the style of Matt and Bray. You know, it's still funny, but I feel that it's kind of law of diminishing returns, and I'm surprised they've gone with it for 3 weeks in a row. They can't stop now. If they don't do it next week, it's going to be really weird. It's going to be weirder if they don't do it than if they do it for the fourth week in a row. Also, the B team has a new Titantron aesthetic to match their DIY model of their t-shirts. The match ends when Matt goes for a twist of fate, but Bo distracts on the apron. Curtis hits his finisher on Matt after the distraction to win, so more momentum for the B team. This good momentum, all the wins keep piling up as they build toward Extreme Rules. We have the first of several Bayley and Sasha go to counseling segments on the night where they're in the lobby, and I did get a pop out of the elevator music they were playing in the lobby, the waiting room there. They find out they're actually having counseling in the same session, and we get the return of Dr. Shelby, who is overseeing their counseling. Boy, if you're a fan of WWE in the year 2013, then this has just been a banner week for you. Team Hell No reunites, and Dr. Shelby is back on TV. Wonderful stuff. Anyway, it's the first segment of many. You have my attention so far, but it's a very tenuous hold. Up next, Titus Worldwide takes on the Authors of Pain. I believe this is the first time since the Raw after Mania where Cole hasn't said, "That's Akam on the left and Razor on the right." AOP dominates Apollo for several minutes. They throw Titus out of the ring, hit the last chapter on Cruz to win the squiggity squash match. I think the tag division on Raw is surprisingly robust, and I may be in the minority when I say that, but when you consider you've got the current angle for the tag titles between the Deleters of Worlds and the B team, you've got the AOP and how they're building them up as killers, and you have the Revival getting some good looks here wrestling against top guys over the last few weeks, and I'll get into the bad of that in a little bit. But I mean, that aside, right now I'm kind of hopefully cautiously optimistic about the direction the tag division is going, because there's a lot of interesting angles from a lot of different teams. In our first of two Roman Reigns tag team exhibitions, we get him and Seth Rollins taking on Drew and Dolph. Speaking of Dolph Ziggler, they announced on Monday on social media that he and Seth will be fighting in a 30-minute Iron Man match for the title at Extreme Rules, which I am very excited about. In this match in particular, Roman gets worked over a lot early on, which is surprising considering he's pulling double duty. Seth looks great in the first half of the match, especially in the build in the first of two hot tags, and his comeback near the end of the match. The Revival storm the ring, and they attack Reigns for the match to end in a disqualification. Drew and Dolph take out Seth, and then the Revival hit the Shatter Machine to Roman. It's a good match for what it was until the finish, and the DQ finish does make sense with the story playing into the second tag team match later in the night. We get Constable Corbin making his way to the ring. He does a pretty funny job putting a positive, corporate spin on the tiff between he and Finn Balor at the end of the tag team match from last week. And we were going to have a chat, and I was just trying to get his attention when I forearmed him in the face. I have to admit that Constable Corbin's gimmick, as much as I kind of loathed the idea when they first debuted it, he's really grown on me in this capacity. He's being kind of like the kiss-ass, smarmy corporate stooge, but he still wants to be a tough guy. And so he wants Finn to apologize for his actions last week. And Finn has a lot of corny jokes about his vest and his haircut. And then Corbin starts losing his composure, and then Finn calls Baron Stephanie stooge. They have a scuffle. Finn stands tall at the end of it. You know, Finn's dialogue's a little corny, but I overall enjoyed this segment. And again, I'm starting to really turn around on Constable Corbin. This was a real highlight for me on Raw. We get Ember Moon versus Liv Morgan in singles action. Ruby Riott is not there on Monday night. She sprained her MCL at a house show over the weekend, so she's out for a little bit. Best of luck for her recovery as well. Between her and Bray Wyatt and Shinsuke Nakamura on SmackDown, the roster right now is getting some bad luck with injuries. It's a good match here. Ember hits the Eclipse, and Liv sells it huge in order for Ember to win the match. So great momentum going forward for Ember Moon. We get our final counseling segment between Sasha and Bayley and a clearly exasperated Dr. Shelby as the session has gone on for several hours according to the story. Sasha and Bayley take turns mocking each other, playing the other person, and then Dr. Shelby channels his inner Jerry Lynn and yells, "Enough!" And then we get a freeze frame, and it says "to be continued," and that was honestly the best part of this whole thing. I was extremely skeptical of the concept last week, but I don't think this was a total miss. I'm not saying it was good, but I'm not saying it was completely bad either. You know, on the plus side, I got a kick out of the elevator music, a nice piece of kind of a throwback fan service thing by bringing Dr. Shelby in. But on the other hand, both women are acting like heels. You have no idea who to cheer for or feel sympathetic for. And the whole thing just does a disservice to the two of them and all the history they've built up since the NXT days. This can either get better or worse, and I'm not really optimistic it's going to get better. We get our second Roman Reigns match of the night as he and Bobby Lashley take on the Revival. Well, I say Bobby Lashley's involved, but he's really not, because Roman, in spite of his beatdown from earlier and his selling of the injuries, he's too proud to even allow Bobby Lashley to get tagged in this time around. Lashley does get a couple of licks in on the Revival as an illegal participant for a few seconds, but that's pretty much it, because Roman never tags him in. The Revival eventually just throw everything out the window and beat down Roman double team style, get themselves DQ'd like a couple of dum-dums. Lashley throws his hands up and he just walks away. And that's pretty much it. The Revival, they beat up Roman Reigns some more. Another shatter machine to end the segment. The Revival don't look too smart in allowing themselves to lose like this, but they do make a bit of a statement by, laying out Roman Reigns twice in one night. The 2 DQ finishes for 2 tag team matches, I think is super disappointing. I think it's kind of a lazy way to book those 2 matches. I have mixed feelings for the Revival on here, because on one hand, they're getting great exposure, the likes of which they haven't gotten in the last several months, working 3 straight weeks with 2 of the show's biggest stars. However, tag teams have a very low ceiling in the company to begin with, and when they're put against this, thrown together tag team of 2 singles guys, the established tag teams always suffer. We've seen this time and time again for decades now, it seems, and this is just another example of that. So what do they really gain, ultimately, from working Roman and Lashley for 3 weeks in a row? It's not going to help their tag team standing, even though it's good. It's a good, kind of thing to keep them fresh and relevant in the eyes of fans. Ultimately, if and when they eventually get back in the tag title scene, it's not going to help them at all. So I'm of 2 minds about it. We get No Way Jose versus Mojo Rawley. How many theme songs has Mojo had in the last couple of months? Mojo once again rejects a rematch. He beats the shit out of some of the Rosebuds on the outside, then Jose, before walking away. If there's one thing Raw likes, it's repeat segments. We get a pre-recorded interview with Ronda Rousey, which, how can she be on TV if she's suspended? Then she says in the interview snippet that her suspension will be over by Extreme Rules, where she will buy a ticket, which, if she's a contracted performer and she's no longer suspended, does she not have a right to just show up with the other wrestlers? That's just, We then get a match with Mickie James and Nia Jax, where during her entrance, Nia reveals that their match between her and Alexa Bliss for the Raw Women's title at the pay-per-view will be an Extreme Rules matchup, and she has Natalya in her corner to negate Alexa Bliss's interference spot near the end. So it's kind of a so-so match. Nia wins here. So basically this whole segment was twofold. One, to announce that the women's title match will be Extreme Rules, and also Ronda Rousey will most definitely play into the finish of that match sitting in the front row. We get a backstage segment with Kevin Owens trying to meditate with Jinder Mahal and Sunil. I guess the whole thing, I'm guessing Jinder's just a comedy act now, because like last 2 weeks he's just been doing the backstage meditation thing and trying to be all pacifist and stuff. It's a huge departure from what he's been doing in the months before this, and like we saw a glimpse of like him kind of playing both sides by doing the pacifist thing in a promo, then being vicious against Chad Gable, but now it just seems he's doing the whole pacifist thing entirely. I don't know where they're going with this. Anyway, the match here, the main event, is Kevin Owens and Braun Strowman. Kevin is still shook after Braun flipped his rental car last week. He wants to stay away from Braun, and then Kurt's like, well, you should have a match again. Like, why does Braun not have to go to counseling when he's doing way worse stuff than what Bayley and Sasha have been doing to each other? The match begins. Kevin Owens gets shoved once. He runs away and gets counted out. Well, I'm glad that he just did it then instead of then wrestling for 20 minutes before he ran away and got counted out. Kevin hides, he runs away and hides in the porta potty next to his car. Strowman comes out looking for him, and I love the fact that the fans are chanting porta potty to try and direct him, like try and guide him toward Kevin Owens. So Braun duct tapes the porta potty shut. Like, honestly, why wouldn't you just like flip the porta potty on its door and just be done with it? That's all you had to do. But no, Braun takes it to the next level. He wraps duct tape around the porta potty. There happened to be a pair of ropes tied to the porta potty somehow, which gives him the ability to drag it with him through the arena, which was a pretty impressive visual. I don't know what the crowd was chanting at this point, but it sounded like they were chanting "This is awesome" as Braun drags the porta potty into the arena area, and he pulls up to the stage thanks to this ramp that just happens to be placed to the side, which is never there any other given week. He then brings the porta potty to the edge of the stage and does a giant running tackle to have the porta potty fly off of the stage onto the concrete. To me, it was kind of reminiscent of when the New Age Outlaws had Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie in the dumpster in '98 and shoved them off the stage there. This brutal looking crash. If a human being was in there, they probably would have been dead. I'm sure there was some just creative directing and editing with this one, because there's no chance that Kevin was actually in the porta potty when it was flung off the stage like that. He would have been severely injured. They do a hard cut after they show Braun, and then it allows him for Kevin to be in position, covered in blue goop and being dead. And so then after this horrific thing that happens where Braun practically kills a guy, then to break the tension, the ring announcer goes, "The winner by count out." Like, what the fuck, dude? A person almost died, for God's sake. Before I move on to SmackDown, this week's Who Wore Better is sponsored by SeatGeek. You know how it is, folks. I've been singing the praises of SeatGeek for well over a year now, ever since last year's Money in the Bank in Las Vegas. If you want to save money on tickets for concerts, sporting events, WWE, this is the place to do it. This is how you do it, through SeatGeek. You can download SeatGeek for either iOS or Android by going to the link at the top of this description. Go to the Accounts tab, enter the promo code WREGRET, and get $20 back on your first ticket purchase. I've had fans for the last several months telling me on social media that they've been able to save money with SeatGeek and how good of a deal it was for them. So please support this channel by going and downloading SeatGeek today. SmackDown begins with an in-ring promo from Team Hell No, back together for the first time in 5 years. Kane says, "I've always been, looking out for you, Daniel." And Daniel's like, "Have you really? Because let's revisit this history from when you tried to kill me and kidnap my wife when I was the champion, just before he had to relinquish the belt due to injury." And Kane kind of brushes it off. Then out come the Usos, who challenge them to a match. And then Kane, ever the politician, not only is he brushing off the bad blood that he and Daniel Bryan had, he's also telling the Usos, "We'll take your offer for a match into consideration." Then Paige comes out and makes a match between the two teams for the main event of the night, and if the Usos win, they will be inserted into the SmackDown tag title match at Extreme Rules. So a good opening segment. They played all the hits, all the best hits of Team Hell No from 2013, and so it put a smile on my face. Is it me, or do Jeff Hardy's promos now seem stranger than Matt's at the moment? He's putting the U.S. title on the line in an open invitational, which is responded to by The Miz. It's a good match here. Miz argues with the ref after trying to cheat to win. He eats a twist of fate and a swanton for Jeff to retain. So they officially announced the Hardy-Shinsuke title match at Extreme Rules. It's just too bad that the build has been on hold after Shinsuke's injury from suffering a police dog bite last week. It just really has to suck for all involved. But the silver lining to this would be, I think, that perhaps this time off of TV will give Shinsuke a nice way to reinvigorate him and kind of reboot him in a way after that lengthy feud with Styles that was so one-sided. He did cut a selfie promo later in the night against Jeff, which I think was strong and to the point, but yeah, it just sucks overall that he got bit by a police dog and now he has to miss TV because of that. Byron Saxton's in the ring hosting the New Day's pancake eating contest. The guys are getting ready to eat pancakes for 5 minutes straight in a competition, but then just as it begins, Sanity interrupts the proceedings and they lay out the New Day. Alexander Wolf eats a pancake as well. It's a nice way for them to regain some heat after losing clean in their first match last week, and probably the best way to end the segment, because could you imagine if they let the New Day just eat pancakes for 5 minutes straight uninterrupted? That would have been terrible. It's a battle of the sexes match as James Ellsworth takes on Asuka. Now, to his credit, Ellsworth has been getting a lot of experience in intergender matches as of late on the independent scene. He's got the intergender belt, so he's doing pretty well for himself in that regard. I can't believe they invoked the spirit of the Billie Jean King Bobby Riggs tennis match when invoking this match, especially for what happens near the end. Carmella shows up and joins on commentary for a bit. Ellsworth takes a few shots and then just bails and runs away. Asuka chases him. It's a double countout, which was kind of meh. They make their way back into the ringside, and then Carmella knocks out Asuka. Paige makes a rematch for next week. It's going to be a lumberjack match, so there's that. But I mean, kind of surprised they felt the need to protect James Ellsworth in this. You could have just had him get beat by Asuka in one fell swoop. Kind of similar to the Ellsworth-Becky Lynch match from last year, and would have been done with it, but they're stretching it out by another week, it seems. But there you go. AJ Styles takes on Aiden English in a non-title match. Pretty straightforward. He makes Aiden tap out with the calf crusher. Rusev, who showed up and actually interrupted AJ Styles' promo with one of his own, beats up AJ after the match, takes him out, hits him with the accolade, and that's the bit there. Rusev looks good here and gives him more momentum, but I just feel the build for this match has been a little flat, especially compared to what we had with AJ and Shinsuke before. We get Becky Lynch versus Peyton Royce of the Iconics. It's a really good match here, and then the winningest star on SmackDown in 2018 so far adds another win to her column by making Peyton tap out to the disarm her. I can see Becky becoming like the next or one of the next challengers to the SmackDown Women's title after Extreme Rules, especially if Carmella somehow retains. Main event time as Team Hell No takes on the Usos. Good work here between the two teams. I feel Kane looked better in this match than he had in his last several appearances on Raw. That's my takeaway from it. The match ends when Daniel hits Jimmy with the flying knee, and then Jay is chokeslammed by Kane. So Team Hell No win here. We get a stare down between the Bludgeon Brothers who show up on the stage and Team Hell No as we fade to black. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. Now, unlike the last couple of weeks, I cannot defend or condone what Raw did for the most part, so SmackDown is the easy choice this week as far as who wins. It's just the more solid, entertaining, well put together show here. There were some things about Raw I did enjoy, like for example, like I said, Constable Corbin is starting to grow on me. I enjoyed that promo he did with Finn Balor. The tag match with Roman and Seth versus Drew and Dolph, despite the DQ finish, the action leading up to it I thought was very strong. And that closing segment with Strowman and KO, it was like, the vehicle in which Kevin was in, the porta potty, was silly, but I think the segment itself is just really strong to get Braun super over. However, I just wonder, the odds of these two now becoming an unlikely partnership, like people were speculating, just a week or so ago. That seems to be out the window, but I still could be wrong. But yeah, the things I didn't like about Raw, the Sasha and Bayley counseling stuff, which is, I don't think it's going to help anybody. The Ronda Rousey logic, where she's suspended, but she can still be on TV, and when she's not suspended, she has to buy a ticket to go to the show. 2 Roman tag team matches, 2 DQ finishes, and just a night of rematches. You can justify having Bobby and Roman against the Revival again, but how could you justify Matt Hardy going against Curtis Axel again? It was a more competitive match than the previous week, but you've got Bo Dallas. Why don't you have him wrestle Matt? That was weird to me, but there's a lot of rematches and just repeat segments overall. With SmackDown, I enjoyed Team Hell No's opening promo, and I thought their stuff was strong, both in promo style and also in the ring. But my one knock on it, I feel the reconciliation, it just was way too rushed. I think you could have really stretched this out even to next week in the go home, where they finally, gel again and are friends again. You could have had some more dissension and more doubt and tension this week and built to it. I think they rushed it a little too much. But let me know what you guys thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comments section below, and be sure to vote which show you thought was better in the gimmick in the upper right hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, and check out Patreon.com/WrestlingWithRegret for exclusive perks and bonus content. I'm Brian Zane, wishing you a safe and happy Independence Day.